Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished musician from Singapore, Mr. Chen Zhangyi. Zhangyi, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashutosh.
Zhangyi is a musician. Straits Times defined him as a breath of fresh air on our musical landscape. BBC Radio 3 describes his music from a voice of the future. He's collaborated with the leading symphonies and orchestras from around the world, and he's been recognized, awarded, and felicitated several times. So Zhangyi, let's start talking about your music. Tell me about your journey as a musician.
Yeah, sure. So, actually, as an artist, I grew up with visual arts. Actually, I when I was young, I learned like Chinese painting and calligraphy, and it's through 5-6 years of my primary school life, and then at about 9 or 10 years old, I started learning violin, and that got me hooked into music. So I kind of transferred art forms to music.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with music through my teens and obviously 20s and 30s. So I went to the Conservatory of Music at Singapore, Yong Siew Toh Conservatory of Music. That's where I teach now. And in between, I went to the Peabody School of Music, Peabody Conservatory at Baltimore, Maryland. And I did my master's and doctorate over that in composition and music theory, pedagogy. So I've been back in Singapore for maybe 7-8 years teaching. Yeah.
Wonderful. And at what stage of your life or did you realize that you wanted to make a career out of your passion?
Yeah, good question. I think 15. That was I have clear memory of that, and of course in the previous life I won a little arts award, painting award at age 10, and then the interviewer asked me, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And then what do you say? I said I wanted to be an artist of some sort, I guess. So 15, that is, to be sure that I wanted to be a musician.
And as they say, the rest of course is history, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Okay. So, Zhangyi, you represent Singaporean culture in your music. Please help me understand what do you do, and especially for our global audience. And if you could give me some examples, that would be wonderful.
Yes, it's a passion of mine within my body of work. And nowadays I am, for the past 10 years, I've been working on writing operas. So like little musicals, kind of in a classical sense, where there's a narrative, there are characters in play. And so I have this set of work, this cycle of work called the Singapore Trilogy, which has 3 parts. And each part is focused on one different Singaporean obsession. So there is food within laksa cantata. Laksa is a type of like spicy noodle. I'm sure you know what it is. And
so I know because I've lived in Singapore for 7 years. But do keep talking.
Have you? Okay.
But do keep talking about everything, because a lot of my audience may not have.
So yes, laksa is this very yummy, delicious food that is a kind of mixture of a lot of different cultures within the Southeast Asia region, and it has spices and there's noodles, and different places have different styles of laksa. Like there's the famous Penang laksa, and then I think in different parts of Malaysia there's different styles of laksa. In Singapore, it's the curry type of laksa, and there's the shrimp paste, and there's a shrimp, there's like tofu, there's
Yeah.
this flowing bihun. So it's very yummy, and
Mm.
we decided to call our piece Laksa Cantata based on Bach's
Mm.
coffee cantata, so
Mhm.
where the music and the food, savory senses come together.
Oh,
So that's
wonderful.
one.
Mhm.
Um, and the second one was based on shopping, and
Mm.
Singapore is a nice place to shop, and
Yeah.
a lot of us like to hang out in shopping malls.
Mm.
So window shopping is this piece
Mm.
based on this pastime. Of course, we borrow these little things that are we identify as Singaporean, and
Mm.
then of course we weave a story around it, and that
Yeah.
becomes the opera.
Yeah.
And the third one comes back to coffee,
Mm-hmm.
which is coffee for one, and
Mm.
it's actually a familial story and a kopitiam. So
Mm.
it's a coffee
Yeah.
shop
Mm.
setting, and there's three characters: the father, the daughter, and the server, the waitress, the kopitiam auntie,
Mm.
which is the coffee shop auntie. So it's comical and it's touching at the same time. So these are some of the subject matter I use within the operas to convey and to kind of show the world what Singaporean
Interesting.
culture
Well,
is.
since I've lived in Singapore for so many years, there's one other thing I'm hoping you'll write as the fourth one and add on to your trilogy, which is the kiasu nature of Singapore.
Yes. Oh yes, yes, that's a good one. Yes,
Okay.
I'll take notes.
So, absolutely. So, Zangi, tell me about some of your more memorable concerts and what goes into curating a concert.
Um, so the trilogy definitely counts as one of these milestones within my career. So in 2018, all three were performed on a single night over a weekend. So that was very memorable. Um, some of the curating process. Well, it was done by a local opera company group called Larietta, and they had the curation that included multisensory, and then we collaborated with an artist for the visuals, the sets, and then we got sponsors from like um, F&B companies like Yakun, which serves like kopi and
Mm.
stuff, and then a little like Nonya Gues
Yeah.
from this famous traditional shop. So there was this fourth dimension of food and taste,
Mm.
which was added into this curating experience of a concert.
Mm.
So that was quite a big highlight of my
Mm.
career.
Mhm.
The other ones would be in 2011,
Mhm.
I had two big breaks that year, and one was working with the London Symphony
Mm.
at the Abbey Road studio, and I won a little competition, and the prize was to have a recording being played by the orchestra, and
Mhm.
there was also a choir. So that was Ariana's Love, based on
Mm.
Greek mythology. That
Mm.
was one of my first big breaks.
Mhm.
In that same year, I had another big break in Japan,
Mhm.
and that was myself conducting the orchestra, Tokyo Philharmonic,
Mhm.
of my orchestral piece called Rain Tree,
Mm.
which is based on a Singaporean poem. And if you've lived in Singapore, you will know it's everywhere. Rain Tree is this like
Yeah.
umbrella-shaped tree, and it provides a lot of shape and so in the orchestral work, there are three movements where I depict
Mhm.
different qualities of this kind of man-made nature, where
Mm.
we've planted a lot of
Mm.
these kind of trees all throughout the city. So that's where the Singaporeanness comes into the orchestral and instrumental music.
Fantastic. So, are you seeing young Singaporeans taking up classical music more now? Why I'm asking you because in India we begin to see a lot of young Indians. When I say young, I'm talking of 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, actually taking up a lot of Indian classical music. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I'm not sure about the numbers, whether there's more or less,
Okay.
but definitely there is a constant flow of young people
Mm.
wanting to learn music, and different styles of music. Could be
Mhm.
traditional music, could be Western classical music, could be Chinese
Mhm.
music. So
Yeah.
myself, my main instrument was the violin,
Mhm.
and I ventured out into viola.
Mhm.
And when I was 17 or 18, I did have a half a year of study with Carnatic violinists.
Mhm.
So that was
Wow.
very interesting
Mhm.
um, time for me, and I learned a little bit about Carnatic music.
Okay.
So that was that is kind of the environment in Singapore where we
Mhm.
have many different cultures and opportunities to learn about this Southeast Asian, or we say Nanyang styles,
Yeah.
where everything comes together. It could be the music, it could be the art, it could be the food, and so all this comes together
Fantastic.
as
Fantastic.
cultural
Fantastic. I agree.
kind of
And yet,
confluences.
what happens is that interpretation of music changes across the whole world, and yet we all kinds of music has the same set of notes, or, not completely, but predominantly the same seven notes of sa re ga ma. Uh, and I wanted to ask you, how do you synthesize your music across cultures?
Oh, that's a big question. So in some pieces or some operas that
Mm,
I've been writing more recently, I tried to a confluence of Southeast Asian and perhaps some Chinese, some Malay, and
mm,
some Indonesian influences within the music.
mm,
So I call it the new Nanyang style, but because the newness comes from how we as contemporary artists create and interact with these influences.
mm,
Of course, the original Nanyang style was an visual style with painters like Liu Kang and all those people. Georgette Chen
mm,
went to Bali and different places. They have Western influences, techniques, and
mm,
Eastern thematic materials,
mm,
and like put that together. We get some sort of original Nanyang style. So that's some of my approach. And in fact, in one of the reviews of a piece that I wrote for the Singapore Symphony,
mm,
Singapore Symphony did a Europe tour, and they asked me to write a piece for that tour. So they toured maybe 5 6 countries and
mm,
played my piece called the Ethereal Symphony.
mm.
That piece was commented as being past the obvious kind of referencing of this different little
Mm, mm.
um, elements of cultures where we just um, embrace this modernity or embrace this kind of being in cosmopolitan Singapore. So if you think about the Changi Airport, the Jewel,
Yeah.
or you think about the Marina Bay Sands, that ship on top of the three towers,
Mm,
that is kind of the Singaporeanness of the now of the 21st century.
mm.
And in a sense, we in the arts we can also do that. Um, we just without being overly obvious in our referencing,
That's
um, and it just we just create, and that is perhaps
wonderful.
Singaporean style.
Wonderful. My next question to you is, how is technology changing music?
A lot. How technology is changing music. So in the past 2 years, a lot of my colleagues, performers, composers, um, presenters
Mm,
have turned to the digital format,
mhm,
and with some help from the Singapore government, there were a lot of grants being rolled out. So a
mhm,
lot of projects have been transferred into digital projects, and new genres kind of appeared. So in some of these recent operas I wrote, they are written to be filmed, and either it's on a set or it's they film it outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
So one of it was a COVID opera called
Mm-hmm.
Panic Love.
Okay.
It's about social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was imagined as a
Mm-hmm.
opera film.
Right.
There is Kampong Spirit, which is
Mm-hmm.
Kampong. It means village.
Mm-hmm.
So the Kampong Spirit means this spirit where the community comes together and helps each other,
Right.
and so that one is the one with the new Nanyang style. That
Mm-hmm.
one was also filmed and also includes some sort of animation with the acting from the singers and so on. So a lot of these operas were conceptualized as films, and then now we are exiting the COVID period. So then hopefully it returns back to the stage.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Uh, there is also a lot of discussion about how important music is in for corporate managers, for entrepreneurs, for startup founders, etc. I'd love to get your thoughts on how can music support a lot of these individuals who lead such stressful lives.
There are many ways music can come into play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the traditional forms of experiencing music might be going to the concert hall, might be attending a concert, but a lot of new programs are exploring like playlists where you can perhaps listen to some newer selection of music
Mm-hmm.
based on your taste. Perhaps if you like French music, you can choose like as if you're on
Mm-hmm.
Singapore Airlines, you choose
Yeah.
the kind of playlist you want. That could be some of the this corporate manners of in incorporating music in
Mm-hmm.
their kind of training
Mm-hmm.
or staff development. Also, there are, I know that my colleagues, some of these conductors, they do workshops with corporate
Mm-hmm.
companies where they bring in a group of musicians, let's say a string quartet,
Mm-hmm.
and then they do a workshop with the staff where they use the musical setting, the dynamics, the hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
and the different parts that is in play within music
Mm-hmm.
to let the staff experience leadership and supporting roles, leading roles, and that kind of I'm not 100% sure what goes on there, but that
Mm-hmm.
is a thing being done as a kind of workshop. So there are many ways, obviously, to incorporate
Absolutely.
music, and
Absolutely.
uh, and now that we can go to concerts again, it is really a social thing where going to the concert, getting your friend, getting your
Mm.
family out dressing up, having a nice dinner before that, having a nice cocktail in between, and then supper afterwards. That is all part of this social thing. It could appear to be very elitist, but there are also a lot of concerts now being offered in unconventional places, like in business parks, in like old power stations. So there's a lot of alternative concerts where classical music is being played or new music is being played, where the experience can be totally different from this stifling, boring concert where you have to sit still and then clap at the appropriate moment. So we are
Fantastic.
kind of revamping all that. Now a lot of these
Mm.
younger groups are doing that, where we try to break the boundaries because we we sense that this might be a barrier to a lot of new audiences.
Fantastic. So I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is that
Yeah.
as you have progressed in your own life, uh, have you seen the taste or the love for music amongst the audience uh, changing, or have you seen the the love for music between in the millennials and the Gen Zs evolving very differently from maybe the older people?
I think the availability of streaming platforms totally changed the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just on YouTube or on Spotify, on Tidal, any of these networks, you can listen to a wide variety of musics.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who's perhaps not trained in the classical
Mm-hmm.
music might one day, because of, let's say, a film soundtrack, be
Mm-hmm.
interested in Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, for example,
Right.
or another composer's classic work. And
Mm-hmm.
then, oh, actually, this is quite interesting. Then there's a door, a window into this classic musics.
Mm-hmm.
Also, game music actually has very well written scores
Mm-hmm.
to make the experience of gaming,
Mm-hmm.
and of course film music, all these different genres
Mm-hmm.
employ classical musicians, and it's something about the full orchestra or this kind of high fidelity sound that makes the experience of gaming uh, or experiencing a film that much deeper. That there's definitely a lot of venues where audiences can experience music, whether they like consciously know it or not. It's there for us to experience.
Fantastic. And my last question to you, and this is for the many, many viewers and listeners who will listen to our conversation. Based on the amazing life you already had as a musician and all the work that you are doing, can you think of one or two lessons that you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from our conversation?
For myself, I mean, there's nothing too profound. The first would be that to be stubborn
Mm-hmm.
and to be persistent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think maybe it comes from my name. My name actually in Chinese it means in growing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
E is perseverance. So
Mm-hmm.
in growing perseverance. So in that sense, I mean all musicians have to be very has to have a lot of grit. So that's what we need to have in whatever we decide that we want to do. Of course, you have to be passionate about it. And the second thing that I can think of, it's wait, I lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, give me a moment. So that grit is the first. What's the second thing that I thought of?
Not to worry, not to worry.
Ah, it's fine. One is enough, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
But on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for sharing with me your amazing journey as a musician. You seem to be doing so much, not just for the world of music, but for a lot of your audience as well, because I think they're beginning to appreciate all the great work you're doing. Thank you also for talking to me about your trilogy on Laksa, shopping, and Kopitiam, and I'm going to
Okay.
certainly look for it on YouTube and listen to and then watch the score a little bit more. Finally, thank you for speaking to me again, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the brand called You Videocast and Podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.